It is time at 13 minutes to 12 on RNZ National to go off the beaten track with Kennedy Warren, who is with us this morning from Whitianga. Morena.
Morena, Susie. How nice to talk to you.
Lovely to talk to you too. And you are in a lovely part of the world, the Coromandel Coast.
Yes. So I'm just sitting at the mouth of the Whitianga Harbour. Behind me, the Mercury Bay Big Game Fishing Club headquarters. In front of me, a lovely traditional, beautiful sculpture of an anchor stone carved from a greenish rock called andesite. It's just sitting there. And then in front of that, the ferry that plies continuously across the 100 metres or so gap of Whitianga Harbour between the township of Whitianga and the little settlement of Ferry Landing. Ferry Landing was the original settlement site here. There's a pa there and up in the hills, and I walked past that just an hour ago up through a historic rock reserve, and there's some quite lovely streaked rock that's exposed in the cliffs around here. Also in front, right on the beach, right on the waterline, trees full of roosting shags. So they'll be, doing whatever shags do when they're not feeding. So sitting in these trees, and it's a lovely morning in the Coromandel Peninsula. The journey down here, always a lovely journey from Auckland, where I'm based, and stopped for the first time this time at a lovely little gallery at Pukorokoro, Miranda. Miranda gained the double name in 2015, reverting to its traditional name first and followed by the European Miranda second. And a lovely gallery there run by Annie Wilson. Now, as you would expect in a place as famous for its shorebirds, quite several pieces featuring birds, some lovely vessels, ceramic vessels by Christine Hellier, profusely decorated with Caspian terns and gannets and godwits. And I was very struck by a lovely totem albatross. So an albatross done in the style of, Native American totem with the bird's wings outspread and the bird's head and bill sideways. Looked very striking. Being a great lover of albatrosses, I lingered over that one by Clovis Visco, that piece was. So coming down, and then of course the Thames coast. What a road through corridors and arches of Puhutakawa, and then across the ranges to the eastern side. And yesterday morning, dolphins, a family plying the waters of Kuotunu Beach, cruising from one end to the other.
What a treat. It's always such a treat to see dolphins, isn't it, in the water?
Yes, pausing and wondering, it was a family group with a couple of calves and then others. I think bottlenose dolphins, just taking their ease on a Sunday morning, and with no particular place to go, it seemed. So there they were, and a lovely sight, a restful sight. I mean, one that you just recuperates, fills the tank.
It does. It's that sort of joyfulness that you get from dolphins, from animals that seem to try to spend most of their life playing, which seems like a very good idea.
It does. Well, actually, it's funny you mention that, because I've been listening to an interview or a podcast with a woman called Annie Murphy Paul, who's written a book about the extended, I think it's called The Extended Brain. Anyway, she's trying to say that the idea of the brain as a computer that must be kind of changed, must be kind of for maximum productivity, must be kept on task. And the new understanding is that no, the brain is a magpie and needs to pick from all sorts of experiences, including the ones we would call leisure, and just being outside, being under trees, seeing dolphins, having those moments is tremendously important. It's how the brain evolved, and it's how we should be continuing to feed it and nurture it and fill its tank, which is what I've been doing.
Absolutely feeds the soul. What about the Mercury Bay Museum? Have you been having a look around there?
I did. I popped in earlier. It's an old dairy factory. So I wonder how many museums in New Zealand are former dairy factories. And so it's the kind of, combination of some history from the agricultural, earlier agricultural times, kauri. This place was very early on visited by British ships to collect kauri spars. So there's references to the kauri milling days there. The wreck of the HMS Buffalo in 1840, a huge event here, a very large ship which went aground and in a storm, an easterly storm, and I think all but two of the ship's company was saved. So there's a lot of Maori history. There's such an important site. There are pa sites all around Coromandel. When you look on the topo maps, yesterday I was walking around through a little place called Matapawa, and then around that's near Opito Bay, and all of the headlands and many islands are pa sites, and you realise just how richly, densely populated this area was. So there I got my dose of always a pleasure to link yourself back to earlier times.
Now, thinking of densely populated, what is going on up in the trees with the birds?
Yes. Well, isn't this a glorious time of year? I've noticed particularly the flowering cherries that with their pink blooms and the manic tui in these trees. It's like a lolly scramble. They seem to be either drunk or high or both, but they are absolutely, it would be nothing to count a dozen tui in a flowering cherry tree. And there was a lovely line. I was checking up in New Zealand Geographic. Stephanie Chamberlain used the phrase "jets of blue glory across ordinary moments." They add an unexpected connection with nature to mundane tasks, such as taking out the compost. And there they are, those jets of blue glory, and of course, singing their hearts out. I love this line from the writer and farmer and naturalist Herbert Guthrie Smith, writing in the early 20th century. And he was observing a female tui singing on her nest. And there's a note here that tui are the only bird in the world that sings on the nest. And Guthrie Smith wrote, we were close to her, yet she sang as if her song could have no ending, as if the world was too full of the ecstasy of life for wrong and rapine to exist. And there you are, that the glory of the singing tui. And they're capable of such wonderful feats because unlike most birds, which have just a couple of sets of muscles to power their voice box, tui have 9. And Stephanie Chamberlain writes, it's almost as though these muscles act as an orchestra, allowing the tui to conduct the timing and pitch of a number of instruments. So there you are. What a nice thought, that the tui is conducting its own internal orchestra of sounds and producing those sounds that we love so much.
And such variation in the types of sounds that they can make. It's quite extraordinary.
Well, it is, from those guttural grunts to those soaring notes. And I love this. If you want to give someone a compliment about their voice, use the whakatoki that says, me he korokoro tui, like the throat of a tui. So if you think someone has a nice voice, you just think, you have the throat of a tui. And how right that is.
I love the idea of them sitting on their nests and singing as well.
Isn't that lovely? Isn't that lovely? Well, now, can I finish up quickly by saying I'm not going to talk again to you or Catherine or anyone else before National Poetry Day. So,
now that's coming up on the 27th of August, yes.
Yes, but there are some events already to warm people up for the day, and you can go online and just look up National Poetry Day, and there's a calendar of events. Quite a lot of, they run this listed from Whangarei to Dunedin. Several of them are poetry and music combinations, so you can listen to poets declaim while jazz musicians are accompanying them. Poetry slams, poetry jams. There are some poetry crawls where you can walk around an interesting site, such as the Corbin Estate in Auckland, with a dozen or so poets stopping at intervals to hear them declaim. But the one I like, I think I might go to this, is on the 28th at Orewa Beach, poetry in the sand. So you're invited to go and write your own poem in the sand, and then they'll be assessed and judged. So there's that happening. Now, have I got time to say a few lines in the poetic mode?
We've got about a minute and a half, so hopefully that will give you enough time.
Well, I'll do this.
Loads of time.
See what else we do. It's just a short piece from. Well, I'm inspired sitting at the mouth of the harbour, thinking about estuaries and mangroves. And so here are just a few lines from the wonderful A.R.D. Fairbairn, a poem called The Estuary. And he's saying, long after humans have gone, either individuals or a species, and here's the quote, the water will still be crawling up the estuary, fingering its way among the channels, licking the stones and the floating shells, minute argosies under the giant moon, still shoreward glide among the mangroves on the creeping tide. So a nice evocation of the timelessness of water and its movements.
Rather lovely. Thank you very much. That is Kennedy Warren there speaking to us from Whitianga in Coromandel this morning.